Next topic is Spring Batch. So here, these are the topics we are going to cover. So we are going to learn what is and why you want to use a Spring Batch, and we will take a look at the architecture aspect of it. And then we are going to see how you can run a job and also configuring a step. So a job is made up of a bunch of steps, and then we are going to learn the concept of what is called item readers and item writers. So what is and why you want to use a Spring Batch? So before we talk about Spring Batch, the motivation for batch processing. So batch processing has been around for a long time. The reason we need batch processing kind of technology is in enterprise organizations, many applications need to perform business operations that include automated complex processing of large volumes of information that is mostly efficiently processed without user interaction. Okay, so maybe at the end of the day or at the end of the month, you might in fact actually perform a certain batch operations. So examples of these batch operations could be time-based events. So at the end of the month, some kind of calculations. At the end of the week, sending notices or correspondence to people on monthly basis or weekly basis, or periodic application of complex business rules processed repetitively across large data set. Okay, so insurance companies might actually compute benefits for their the members on a monthly basis, or whenever they need to, or at the end of the day or something. Integration of information that is received from internal and external systems that typically require formatting, validation, and processing in a transactional manner into a system of record. So, as a company, you might actually collect a lot of data from many different sources. You might have to actually convert all those different data into a unified format or something like that, and then actually save into your choice of repository. So that doesn't need to be done the on-demand basis. That could be done at the end of the day, again at the end of the week, and things like that. So those are all examples of batch processing. So what is Spring Batch? Spring Batch provides lightweight, comprehensive batch framework to enable for building these kind of batch applications. Okay, and again, it's based on design principles of Spring Framework, which is POJO based and easy of development. Okay, and it provides reusable functions that are essential in processing large volumes of records. So these are basically the set of functionality that any batch applications needs to have, like logging and tracing, transaction management, job processing statistics, and job restart and job skip and resource management. So these things are provided as part of the Spring Batch framework. So from the architectural standpoint, there is application layer, batch core layer, and batch infrastructure layer. So of course, application is your Spring Batch application. Batch core contains core runtime classes for launching and controlling batch job. So that actually includes job launcher class, job class, and step class, and the implementations. Okay. And batch infrastructure contains common readers and writers and services such as a retry template and things like that. So as we are going to see later on, there are common reader and writer implementations that could be actually leveraged by many batch applications. Those things are, you can think of them actually as utility classes, and those things are provided in batch infrastructure. Okay, so architectural components. So this is how things work. Job launcher. By the way, everything is going to be actually maintained in a job repository. It's a persistent storage where all the things are, the maintained as a persistence component. The reason is because, whenever there is actually failure, then you want to actually start it again, and things has to be coming from persistent storage. Okay, so job launcher will, launch a job, and job is made of a bunch of steps. Okay, so you can see one-to-many relationship between job and step. So job is made of multiple steps, and each step is made of item reader, item processor, and item writer. Okay, so it's one-to-one relationship. So one step has one item reader, one item processor, and one item writer. Okay, one item processor might be skipped. You might have one item reader and you might have just item writer if you just actually write things back to another storage. Okay, so you might actually read from a database and then you might actually write into a file system or vice versa. Okay, or you might actually read it from a file system and then it will send it to a web service. Okay, things like that without any processing. Okay, so just to repeat what I said, a job has many steps. Okay, job has many steps, which has exactly one item writer, item processor, and item writer. Okay, job needs to be launched by job launcher, and any metadata about the currently running process is stored in job repository. So job repository maintains information about all these components in a persistent storage, typically database. So what is a job? A job is an entity that encapsulates entire batch process. Okay, so this job, you can call it end of the day job. Okay, and a job will actually create a job instance. Okay, and job instance, whenever this job instance get attempted, it could actually attempt multiple times, right? So you can have a job instance could have a multiple job execution object. And whenever job instance is actually getting started, job parameters could be actually fed into it. Okay, so these are parameters. Okay. So how to create a job? You can create it from programming. You can create it programmatically, but in general, you are going to specify your job in a context configuration file. So here, this is an example. So I'm creating football job, and it's made of multiple steps. Okay, so the first step is doing player load, and then it goes to the next step, game load. So it goes to game load. Once the game load step is done, then it goes to the next step, which is the player summarization, and it goes to the third step here. Okay, so this football job is made of 3 steps. Okay, all right. So what is a step? A step is a domain object, meaning Java object, that encapsulates an independent sequential phase of a batch job. Okay, so the job is made of multiple steps, and each step, whenever it gets executed, it has the step execution object. So step execution represents a single attempt to execute a step. Okay, so a new execution will be created each time step is run, similar to job execution. Okay. All right, so as we talked about, job repository is a persistence scheme in which job launcher or job and step implementations and their objects are maintained. Okay, so when a job is first launched, job execution is obtained from job repository, and during the course of the execution, step execution and job execution objects are persisted to the repository. So if somehow something got screwed up, then you could actually restart the job from fetching it from a database. Job launcher again represents a simple interface that has a run method for launching a job with a given set of parameters. So this is basically an interface that has a single method called the run. Okay, so it will take a job object and job parameters object, and then it will run, and then it will send back a job execution object. Okay. All right. Now, item reader is an abstraction that represents a retrieval of input for a step. So as we talked about in a batch job, there are many items. We are talking about large volumes of data, or large volumes of some input data. So each of those items will be read by item reader. So one item at a time. Okay. So when item reader has exhausted the items that it can provide, then it will return null. That means that is the end of the data set. Okay. Item reader can retrieve data or read data from many different input types. It could be from flat file, it could be XML, it could be database, it could be web services, it could be pretty much anything. Okay. So this is the input. This is the item reader, the interface. Basically, it has a read the method. Okay. So it will read one item at a time. So that is item reader. Item writer, on the other hand, is going to it represents the output of a step, of course, and unlike item reader, which reads one item at a time, item writer will actually do a batch or chunk of items at a time. Okay, So because it's generally expected that items will be batched together into a chunk and then output, the interface accepts a list of items rather than an item itself. So in the right case, it will take chunk of items, meaning a set of items, okay, to write, okay, because you don't actually sometimes write one by one, right? Okay. Item processor is an abstraction that represents business processing of an item. Okay, so item reader reads one item and item writer writes them. Item processor provides access to transform or apply other business logic. So it's basically, it will do something to the item. Okay, so if when processing the item, it is determined if the item is not valid, then it will return null, and that indicates that item should not be written out. Okay. Okay, so in terms of specifying this job in the configuration, you can actually use this namespace. Okay, so schema batch. I mean, there is a Spring Batch namespace. Okay, so whenever you're actually using these elements of job, step, and things like that, they are from this Spring Batch namespace. Okay, so let's talk about how we can run a job. Yeah, so as we talked about, you can launch a batch job through the job launcher, and of course you need a job to launch and also job parameters, right? Okay. Scheme for running a job. You can run the job at the command line, so that's pretty much what we are going to do. Okay, so because you can run a job at the command line, you can actually do it inside the enterprise scheduler, like a cron job. Okay. You can actually run the job within a web container. So you might in fact have admin console through which you can start the job, you can stop the job, and things like that. Okay, so we're gonna actually try this one. One of the sample application that could be created from STS is in fact the admin console for jobs. Okay, so here basically this is an application, web application through which job management could be performed, job administration could be performed. Okay, so let's talk about how we can configure a step. Okay, so as we learned, a step is a component within a job. Job is made of multiple steps, right? Okay. Now, there are two different kinds of steps. Mostly, we are dealing with a chunk-oriented processing. Okay, so this is what we just talked about in previous slides. Spring Batch uses a chunk-oriented processing style within its most common implementation. So this is where you are going to use item reader to read an item processor to process it, then you are going to use item writer to write a chunk of those into the output. Okay. Now, that is typically what you are going to use in your batch job. However, there is a case that it's not if you have to perform a very simple task, okay, that doesn't require reading and processing and writing things. That's the time that you are going to use what is called the tasklet step. So this is the simplest possible of doing things. Okay, so whenever you don't need reading and writing and processing it, then you can use as a tasklet step. So chunk-oriented processing is not the only way to process a step. What if a step is just made of a very simple stored procedure call? So if you want to actually just call the database procedure call, then creating chunk-oriented, creating item reader and item writer, item processor is probably overkill. Okay, so you could actually implement it using item reader and return null, and you can certainly implement it that way, like this. You can implement the call as an item reader and return null after procedure finishes, so that the subsequent item processor and item writer is not going to be handled. But that's actually too much overkill. So basically, Spring Batch provides a very simple way of actually doing a simple task in the form of taskless step. Okay, so let's see these two examples. So this is an example where you are going to specify chunk-oriented processing, where you are going to read one item through item reader, and you're going to process it using item processor, and then you're going to write chunk of those into output using item writer. So here, this job has a single step, and it's named as step 1, and then it does have tasklet, and then it has a chunk. Okay, so this is chunk-oriented processing. So it will use item reader, and it will use the item reader called item reader. So this is a name. Okay, so it doesn't have to be item reader like this. You can say XYZ. Okay, as long as you have XYZ, the item reader object. Okay. So it's doing item reading using item reader object, and then it's doing processing of item processor object, and then it's going to do item writing using item writer object. And the commit interval 10 is the number of chunks. Okay, so whenever you're writing to item writer in a chunk, that is the size of the chunk. All right, so let's do exercise 1. So if you take a look at the exercise 1, here we are going to build Hello World Spring Batch application using item reader and item writers. Okay, so let's take a look at the so you're going to import the project, and yeah, so this is the oh yeah, so this is actually creating the Spring Batch project. Okay, so this is not reading it. Okay, so we are going to actually create a very simple Hello World Spring Batch project using STS template project. So you're going to say the file Spring project, and then you're going to specify batch underscore hello world, and then you're going to use template. Okay, so expand batch, and you're going to select simple Spring Batch project like this, and then you're going to have it on the Spring Batch. Okay, and provide your top level package com JPassion.examples. Okay, and then you can run it. So you go to that directory, and then the way you are going to run it is you are going to actually run this way. So you are going to actually, Maven clean and compile. So we can actually compile the code, and then you are going to run Java code. And the main class is actually provided by Spring Framework. Okay, so this job runner, command line job runner, is the code that is already provided. So all you have to do is basically by saying -t exec.main class and this class, and then you provide an argument. The argument is basically the context configuration file as well as the name of the job. Okay, and if you run it, basically it does very simple things. It will just display hello world. Okay, in the example item writer. Okay, and you can actually see what is happening by reading this debug statement. Okay, you can also run Maven exec Java, because you can just say Maven exec Java without actually specifying all this. Okay, because this is already configured for you. When you create a project, this is already configured as exec Maven plugin, and it actually provides this main class for you as part of the pom.xml file. So you don't have to actually specify all that stuff, after Maven exec Java. All you have to do is Maven exec :Java, and that should work fine. So if you take a look at the code, this is the code that gets generated. Okay, so we have a module context.xml file that actually contains a Spring Batch configuration information, and then we have a batch properties, and then we have a launch context.xml file. That's another context configuration file, and then we have this item reader and item writer, and then we have configuration files, configuration Java file. So this is the launch context XML file that gets read the first time. So basically it does have it's going to read the batch properties, and then we do component scan, and then we initialize the the database source object. Okay, and then we run the SQL script. Okay, and then basically, yeah. So here, this is actually creating all the required tables for Spring Batch in a table in the database. Okay, and then it's going to import module context.xml file. So this is where the meat is. So this is the module context configuration file where we define a job called job1. Okay, and it contains a very simple the chunk-oriented task. So here we have a step. You have a single step. Okay, and then we have a tasklet. Inside the tasklet, we have a chunk, and it's going to use this reader object for reading it, and this is actually writer object. It's an item reader and item writer. Okay, and then commit interval is 1, so it's going to just write one item and write one item. Okay, so this is the item reader object. Okay, so this, you can see this reader, this name is specified using add component annotation. So when this reader is used, basically search for all any component whose name happen to be reader. So this is the item reader. So this is the example item reader implements item reader interface. In this case, it's reading the source is basically string of array, the string array. Okay, so it's a string array, and in this read case, it's going to read item by item. So it's going to actually read H first, and then it's going to read this guy, and things like that. Okay, so basically, it's actually reading one by one, and this is the item writer, in which is going to, because the commit level is commit interval is 1, it's going to actually write one item at a time as well. So in this case, this data is basically the one character. Okay, and that one character is going to be written down. Okay. All right, and item processor, so we are not actually using item. So here we are going to actually add item processor. So item processor is, basically we get the item, and then we just lock the item. Okay, and then so you added the processor, and now we want to actually see only the info. So you can just change the batch log level into info, so that we don't actually see all the debugging messages, because debugging message is just too verbose. Okay, so when you actually do that, what you can see is that you can now see the process hello world, and this is actually the output message. Okay, all right. Looks like actually yeah. Okay, so I think I actually give you wrong information. So in this reader, I said it's gonna actually read, one item is like a character. That's not the case. So this is a string array. So we have a single, we have actually single string array. So you might want to actually change this guy to add another string here. Okay, so this is one item, and then this is null. So basically that stops right there. So try to add another one, like goodbye, and that is gonna be the second item. Okay, so that is your exercise. All right, so I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes to try this exercise. So what we have learned, and the exercise was chunk-oriented tasklet. Okay, and as we learned, there are two different kinds of the step configuration. One is chunk-oriented, which we just play around, and then the other one is a tasklet step. Okay, so this is how the chunk-oriented step is configured. Inside the step, then you say tasklet, and inside you have a chunk element, sub-element. Okay, now if you want to configure a tasklet step, then the only thing that you need to have is tasklet element like this. Okay, so there is no chunk sub-element. So that's the difference. So actually I named it as a tasklet step class. So to create tasklet step, okay, the ref attribute will reference a bean containing tasklet object. Okay, so no chunk element should be used inside the tasklet. Okay, because that is not chunk-oriented processing. So you are, in either chunk-oriented or tasklet step case, you still have to have a tasklet, and inside, if you have a chunk, then that's chunk-oriented processing. And if you don't have a chunk, and instead you have a ref with the some Java bean, that is the tasklet step, the example. So this tasklet step class, this one, my tasklet, it implements the tasklet interface and has one method called the execute, which will be called repeatedly until either it returns finished or throws an exception or signal of failure. Okay, so this tasklet inside the execute method of this tasklet, you might actually call some stored procedure of the database, or you might actually do some processing or whatever. Okay, so let's do exercise 2. So here we are going to add 2 tasklet steps to the job that we have created in exercise 1. Okay, so here we have the chunk-oriented the step, this guy, and now once this is done, we want to go to the next step. So we say next equals step 2. So when you go to step 2, whose ID is here, okay, this is the case where we are using tasklet step. Okay, so here we are going to call the say good morning tasklet bin object. Okay, and once that is done, we go to next step. Okay, so this is step 3, and then we go to step 3, and this is the end. And this guy is just calling say good night tasklet. Okay, and these 2 bins needs to be instantiated, so we can instantiate that by having those 2 to be configured in XML file with this class. Okay, or we could actually use the add component annotation inside this class. Okay, in that case we don't need to declare those 2 bins here. Okay, all right, so now that is the change, and this is the say good morning tasklet step. So the only thing it has to do is implements a tasklet, and then provide business logic for execute. Okay, and then it will return repeat status, and either in general you're going to return repeat status that finished. Same thing with this guy. Okay, so when you run the application, then you are going to see good morning and good night. So this is from step 2. This is from step 3. Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you guys about 5 minutes to try this exercise. Next topic is built-in item reader and item writers. So item reader and item writer that we have built was actually custom version in which we just read a set of strings, right? But there are many different types of inputs that are common in typical batch applications. For example, flat file item reader is provided for reading things from file system. You might want to actually read things from the Hibernate. Okay. You might want to read from things from a database using JDBC. You might want to read things from JMS, basically reading messages as an item. JPA paging item reader, so you want to receive, each page as an item. You might want to read things from a MongoDB as NoSQL, the database. Stacks event item reader, so you might want to read XML element, and each element will be actually read as an item. So these are the common input, item readers that you might want to actually take advantage of. Okay, so you can certainly create custom item reader as we have done in our exercise 1. Okay, but you can take advantage of these item readers and item writers. Okay, so exercise 3, we are going to leverage this built-in item reader and item writer. So let's see exercise 3. So here we are going to, basically we are going to create a brand new project called the batch CSV to DB. So what we're going to do is we are going to read CSV file, and then we are going to save it into database. Okay. So, simple Spring Batch project, and next, and provide the package. And then you are going to, so when you create it, it will actually create example item reader and example writer Java, which we don't need because we are going to use our own the item readers and writers, which actually take advantage of the built-in item reader and writer. Okay, so we can just delete these 2, and you can delete the test code of that as well. And then we are going to modify and create code Okay, so the things we want to modify is job configuration file. Okay, so we are going to name the name instead of job 1, we are going to name it as a CSV to database job to reflect what we are doing with this job. Okay, and item reader and item writer. So this is the name of it. Okay, so this is the item reader, and this is the item writer. Okay, so item reader is we are using flat file item reader. Okay, and the name of the file is here. So the name of the file is a sample data.csv file. Obviously, we have to actually create the CSV file later on in the subsequent step. Okay, and then we are going to use in the CSV file, we are going to use the line tokenizer. So in each line of the CS file, we are going to take it. The first item will be taken as a first name. Second item will be taken as a last name. Okay, so when you're using CSV file, you can take advantage of this mapping default line mapper, the class. Okay, and for writing to the database, we are using JDBC batch item writer. Okay, and the actual command that we are going to use, SQL command we are going to use is this. Okay, insert into people, and the last name and first name and values of this. Okay. All right, and then we are going to provide SQL parameter. So yeah, so this basically you remember that we had SQL parameter source. It's actually a way of actually getting the parameters, right? So this is in fact the parameter values, last name and first name. Okay, so this is a batch properties in which we are going to use MySQL. Okay, so you might want to actually start the MySQL later on. And then we are going to modify launch context.xml file. So here we are going to, so this is basically running a 3 script files. Okay, so we are going to actually take a look at the script file later on. Okay, so this is SQL. So this is basically SQL files creating a people table. And then we are going to create the input. So this is input data. So this is basically first name and last name in a CSV file format. Okay, so this is for creating sample data CSV file. And then we are going to create the field set SQL parameter source provider the Java file. Okay, on the example package. And basically, we are just kind of, mapping properties. We are mapping first name and last name to the SQL named parameters. Okay, and we are going to modify the pom.xml file so that we have MySQL client driver is provided as a dependency. Okay, and then you want to actually change the name of the job. Okay, in the pom.xml file to CSV to database job. Okay, because this is the name of the job. This launcher command is going to launch. Okay, and then when you run the application, and of course you have to start the MySQL. Okay, and so when you actually do MySQL, you can actually see in the beginning, you're not going to actually see any, let's say, the Spring Batch related tables. Okay, so we're going to use the test database, which is already created. And when you're running MySQL, test database is actually created as a default. If you don't have it, you can just create one. Okay, then there is no tables in the test. Okay, now, so there is no tables in the test. Now, when we actually run this application, all the job repository, it's a job repository database tables are actually created under this. So when you run this code, okay, you can actually see, this job database tables, job batch database tables are in fact created. It also created a people table as well. Okay, so now when you actually see the contents of people table, you can see these guys. These 5 peoples are named. The names are actually read from CSV file, and they are actually saved into people, the table. Okay. So this is actually, we don't have enough time to do this, so I'm going to actually ask you guys to import the project from solutions and just run it. Okay, so let's actually Spring Batch. Let's just I'm gonna just create working set Spring Batch and finish. And let's import the project on the solutions directory. Okay. Okay, so we have a solutions here. Okay. So I have to start MySQL first. Okay, so let's actually start the MySQL. So MySQL is started. Okay, and then I'm going to start the MySQL shell. So I'm going to start the MySQL shell. Okay, so I can just open any MySQL u root and -p, and there is no password. Okay. Okay, so let's see databases. What databases we have? Okay, so we have a test database. Okay, so let's actually, you say use test. That means I'm using this test database as a default database. Okay, now let's see the tables. Okay, so I have it. So I'm gonna actually delete, so I'm gonna delete this guy. So delete database test. Oh, is that drop? Okay, so it's deleted. So I don't have any. So I'm gonna create database test. Okay, now if I see, and so let's use test again. Now if I try to see the tables, show tables, there is no tables here. Okay, so now I'm gonna actually run this application. So Spring Batch and Spring Batch examples. Where is this? Okay. So the solution is yeah. So I thought actually this batch sample. Yeah, where did I actually import that file? Hmm. It looks like I didn't import. Okay, so maybe I didn't import. Okay, so I'm going to import again existing and Spring Batch. Oh, it's actually imported. So solutions. Okay. Oh, maybe this is the one. Okay, so let's run this guy. It's down. Yeah, maybe I should actually incorrectly named. Okay, so name of the solution project need to be looked at. Batch. And now let's run the application. Yeah, select the command line job runner. Okay. Ah. Oh, yeah. So I have to actually run it at the command line. Okay. So sorry about that. So you are going to change everything, and then Maven install, then yeah, so MySQL, and then you are going to, yeah, so you want to actually run it, Maven compile exec Java, okay? So I'm going to actually do that right here. So in my case is, oh, I have to actually know what is a working set. Okay, what is this project? So let's just make sure that this is the project that I'm talking about. Yeah, so that is the project, okay? And this one is, where is this? Okay, so this is the, oh, okay, so it's actually under batch SVDB. Okay, so I go to solutions. Hmm. Okay, so here I'm going to say the Maven compile exec Java. Maven compile exec Java. Okay, looks like it worked okay. So, if I actually go to, I can just go to here, and then I can say show tables. Okay, so people has been created, so I can say select stuff from people. Okay, and then it worked okay. All right. Okay, so hopefully you guys get the idea. Okay. The running a job, I want to actually show you how you can actually create the project. So here we're going to actually create a brand new project of Spring, the project, and this is admin, and so here the under Spring project, we are going to expand batch. And if you select this guy, Spring Batch Admin Web App here, this is going to create the the web application through which you can actually start and stop. It's basically managing your uh, the uh, the batch jobs. Okay. So let's see, yeah, it's actually building workspace. And if you run it, it's actually web applications. As I said before, you can actually have your job to be managed at the command line, or you could actually manage at the web application. So here, if I just to say run as and install, and I can run the application, run on server, and finish. Okay. So let's wait until this build is done. So you can see, we have like a jobs. Okay, so we have, sample jobs actually here. So you can click job one, and then you can launch it. Okay, so this is execution started. You can take a look at the execution started. You have detailed information about here. So this is the Spring Batch admin application that you can actually take a look. Okay. All right, so that is the end of the